I think first of all, you'll feel it. Number one, you have to have massive desire. You have to have massive ability to look stupid for a really, really long time, and most people cannot handle looking stupid, even to their closest friends. You know, so and that's years of that.
The following is a conversation with Yoni Waxman. Yoni is a Miami resident and the founder of Fetchit, a company revolutionizing real estate investing, especially Airbnb investments, by handling all of the research and presenting users with only the most relevant information needed to make an investment decision. Here's his story. Yoni, my man, appreciate you coming on the podcast.
What up?
Nothing much, man. Jealous that you're in Miami right now, but hopefully one day we'll get there. But for those that don't know Yoni, he's the founder of Fetchit, a company that does a lot of work with Airbnbs and helping investors really get into that space. So we're going to get into all that, but a lot of these journeys have a beginning. So just to backtrack a little bit, you look like similar to my family that you're not originally from America. So where is your family originally from?
Oh wow, yeah, I've never been asked that before. So
A good sign.
my we'll start with my dad's side. So my dad's family has been in America for a while. So my great grandfather, before the Nazis got to Ukraine
Mm-hmm.
and before the Babi Yar massacre and anything like that, my great grandfather from the Ukraine fled uh, Europe and got to Cleveland, Ohio through a series of fortunate events. And he, after that, opened a plumbing store in which my family made their name through that. So I have Ukraine on one, America for a while via Ukraine, and then on my mother's side, she's Israeli and born in Israel, and her father was from Casablanca, Morocco, and his wife, my grandmother, was from southern Tunisia, a place called Sfax,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which North Africa. There's a lot of North African Jews in France and Israel. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
you're familiar, and so I look more like my mother's family because she had some very dominant genetics. So I had to start with my dad's first because people don't believe me that I'm actually an Ashkenazi Jew.
No
So
worries. We all have interesting stories. On the personal end, my family is originally from Ukraine, but both of my parents met in Israel. So me and all my siblings were born there. But I grew up speaking Russian, so I'm
oh,
familiar with
nice,
the whole multicultural shenanigans. So I have to
nice.
ask: do you consider yourself Sephardic or Ashkenazi?
You
Take your
know,
time.
I would say I like to tell when people ask me that question. I usually say I'm into what I do, not where I came from. But I will say I definitely consider myself Ashkenazi, and I always have to get into the funny explanation of like, you don't look Ashkenazi. Your eyebrows look a little bit too thick. Your skin's just a tad too dark. Your beard's a little too Omer Adam. Like, what's going on? So, that's usually so. I would say my personality. I am Ashkenazi because it goes by the dad and the customs of the father, and I love my father. But I would say if you had to tag me culturally, I look more Sephardic physically, and my personality is very warm and extroverted. So you could say in a way that that spice might make me Sephardic, but at the same time, if we're going to go all the way down the stereotype route, I would tell you I'm a monster avid reader and I'm very into education. You could say that
Mhm.
that's an Ashkenazi trait. So it's really, I'm a mix of a few different things, and it influenced me into the molecule that I am. So,
Best of both worlds. That's the first time I've heard anyone say like, "Oh, I have a little bit of Omer Adam in me." And now that I think about it, you could pass as like the Silicon Valley Omer Adam. So maybe that could be a funny joke from now on. But one of the
yeah.
things that you mentioned is that your family had a plumbing business way back in Cleveland, Ohio. Do you remember what happened with that business, or can you talk about kind of what went on?
Yeah. I worked in the business
Mm-hmm.
for a long time, right when I got out of school. So, my grandfather is, if there was an Ohio Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame, he should be inducted yesterday. At its peak, it was a $500 million company. and if you adjusted that for inflation, I bet you it's more than a billion. But at the time, at its peak, it was a $500 million company, and I would describe it as a manufacturer and distributor of mostly plumbing supplies, but also other products, consumer products, in the United States, Canada, and even all over Europe. We had a division in Europe. And there was a time when they were making 3 acquisitions a year.
It's
I used to
incredible.
work with Mike Milken's famous investment bank, who, if my grandfather was here, he would tell the story of Mike Milken cut my great uncle and grandfather and father $100 million blank check to make acquisitions. That's how crazy it got. Um,
Gotta love
at
junk bonds.
at the peak of its powers and at the peak of it's our family Wolf of Wall Street story.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had to give it a term, and we sold off most of the subsidiaries over the last 2 years, and I worked in the business for 8 years. We actually started a subsidiary called Leak Smart. We were the first company to invent leak detection and shut off technology in that space.
Interesting.
We still own the business, by the way. So there are parts that we still own that we're operating. I would call it low flame operations. Um, and there, and I could talk about what I do and how I'm connecting that stuff to what
Mm-hmm.
I do now, because there is a way that there is a connection. But that's the little bit of the bullet points of the business. It was a top 3 Home Depot supplier in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very cool. And I'm very proud that they did that.
That's awesome to have, those kind of clients and to be have that much money and to at least make that much revenue, and especially to work with Michael Milken. It's definitely, I'm sure there are a ton of stories, but we'll save that for another day. But I know ultimately that company had a little bit of difficulty. Can you describe a little bit about what happened around that?
Uh, if you're around for 100 years,
Hmm.
it's not always a good time.
Got it.
So, if you're batting 100 over 100 years, I would say uh, that's like godlike level business
Hmm.
skill and luck.
Hmm.
So there were different decades which were better,
Hmm.
and there were different decades that were harder. The 80s were really good for them. The 90s were okay. 2000s were better. Um, I would say we had a boom right during COVID, and then after COVID, we had a little bit of a difficult time. I think the lessons from that are you watch movies about business, and you see articles on Forbes, or you look at Instagram. It's designed to uh, make it look faster than it is. Like
Hmm.
there's a great thing that Alex Hormozy says, is that the Rocky training scene is 2 minutes in the movie,
Hmm.
but it's 5 years in real life.
Hmm.
So I would say I'm surrounded genetically and my family members with some unbelievable persistence and strength that they've been able to survive in business for 100 years.
Got it. So it sounds like there is a lot of cyclicality, especially with what's happening in the economy. And I really like that Alex Hormozy quote in the sense that, especially on Instagram, we only seem to see the peaks of all these people, when they finally made it or they bought the nice car or they bought the nice house or whatever it may be. But in reality, growth is a slow, painful, and really arduous process. So I'm glad we see it that way. But speaking about that, I know after that you tried and you kind of said you failed at a few things. Before you got into what you're doing now, what are some of the things that you try to kind of make it in?
Uh, so you're catching me at the early stage part of my fully entrepreneurial journey,
Hmm.
independent financial journey. And I'm doing 2 things right now. I would say that are interesting. I mean, I could answer that with Leak Smart, and I could talk about stories
Hmm.
from the leak detection company, but I'm going to gloss over that. Um, right now, I'm doing Fetchit, which is
Hmm.
a technology data platform play, and I'm also doing real estate development, which are 2 really hard and couldn't be more different things.
Hmm.
And I would say the lessons I learned are different on the technology side and on the development side. Um, if you don't mind, I'm gonna dig into one bucket to
Go
start. Is
ahead.
that
Yeah, it's your story.
okay? As I've never talked about this, so this is unscripted.
All
Uh,
good. That's what makes people appreciate unscripted. So say what you got
yeah,
to say, Yoni.
yeah. So on the development side, it feels like a marathon, where on the technology side feels like thousands of sprints.
Hmm.
So I think development in a lot of ways is harder because you don't get the dopamine hit. So, you can have like valleys without a dopamine hit. What
It
I mean
doesn't
by,
scale as fast, basically.
yeah, like if you're doing technology, let's say you're managing the sales of the business every time you get a subscription, it's like, yeah. But conversely, in development, I had one situation where we hired uh, the builder that was local to our Jewish community in Cleveland, where I grew up,
Hmm.
and we had a framer. Framer is the group that takes the raw materials and actually puts the rough house together.
Hmm.
It's actually the most exciting part, I would say, of development is once you're past your permit to build and foundation, you get to actually see the fruits of your labor, possibly a year or two. You
Hmm.
can imagine the dopamine hit of seeing that thing starting to go up after a long time, you know. And so on the first day we're putting the house up, uh, mayhem breaks loose on the job site, and the builder and the framer get into a fist fight over the dumbest argument in the world. I won't even indulge it, about scaffolding,
Hmm.
which is what they use to get up in the air. And I had to break it up. I had to let the framer go. I had to let the builder go. I had some many miracles along the way.
Hmm.
But as a first time real estate developer, if you want to call it that, and first time ever in Tennessee, which just couldn't be more culturally different than Jewish kids from the Northeast. Um, very southern,
Hmm.
and it's a vacation town in the Smoky Mountains. I was like, I don't know how to get through this. So there's a lot of little things like that that made me appreciate my family's willpower and persistence through the decades.
Hmm.
Where, like, I think a lot of guys probably in that moment, maybe they didn't have a family and business, or maybe they don't have the same fortitude. Maybe they would have quit that day. I certainly felt an impulse to quit and like just
Hmm.
go home without family or friends. But I would say that's like a fun story, a difficult story of entrepreneurship that happened in the last year that I like to tell my friends about. And so hopefully people listening will become friends. So I would share that with them.
Got it. It's a great story there, and I'd ask you who won, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole between
We
us.
all lost. We all
We
lost.
all lost.
We all lost. God, the cops didn't come. That shit would have been crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's good that you kind of kept going and were able to, finesse around that. But another thing that I thought was interesting, and you kind of hinted at it just now, I saw in one of your Instagram videos, you spoke about some limiting beliefs that you used to have. So what were they?
Oh my God. Uh, I never do podcasts, so this is
Yeah, Yoni, I asked juicy questions, so this is we're really getting into it.
yeah. No, you're going to be great at this. So people listening, share this with your friends. Daniel's a good guy.
Thank you.
Let's help him go viral. He deserves it. Um, Limiting beliefs. I think different years, different limiting beliefs. Um, I probably should have left my family business many years before. But when you grow up, are groomed to, and expect to go into something so big, it feels like an institution in the world you grew up in.
Hmm.
Which is where I grew up in Cleveland. It was like a very big deal. So I was very proud of it. I was not. I I would say things were happening where I wasn't present. That God and the universe were telling me, like, you gotta make your own destiny. And I only left once we started selling off subsidiaries. And I would say it was a there's a concept that I've been reading from an author called Eckhart Tolle. He talks a lot about resistance. I should have like observed the resistance and like course corrected. Like, okay, I'm feeling a lot of this. Just like
Hmm.
drive that way before before I was forced to. So I would say like that. It might qualify as limiting belief. I don't know. I would just say it's something where I grew through and became wiser through. And like, I'm very grateful now that I am an entrepreneur because I'm getting more empathetic, better listener, better strategically. Ego is much more on the bookshelf than active. It's there, but it's not, running the show.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of things. Some, I don't know if this qualifies. I used to have this is I would call it in the habits area, but limiting beliefs probably would lead to choices. So for good and bad habits, it's possible they kind of
Mhm.
connect. Um, I used to pick my eyebrows when I was nervous, which is the worst habit in the world.
Glad to see you're not nervous now. So
Now look at these snails. I'm just telling you. I used to have, and if anyone listens to this and like knows me for years since I was 15, I'm 34 years old. I would pick the out of my left eyebrow whenever I'd be like anxious, and I've defeated a probably 15-year plus habit. So I'm really
Mhm.
proud of that, and I think that's a signal probably of having conquered some limiting beliefs or um, lack of self control or lack of presence. And I think I sort of, as the deeper I've gone in the entrepreneurial journey, I think the stronger I've gotten in my brain, and like I've been able to break habits that, I mean, you know how hard it is to break a habit 15 years plus long?
Very
It's
hard.
really literally this whole eyebrow wasn't there like 8 months
Crazy.
ago. It's this dumb habit. Why would you pick your eyebrows? It's like worse than biting your nails. You're
Mhm.
like, it's like almost reminds me of Two-Face from Batman. You're like hurting yourself. Why would
It's
you
a
do that?
habit. It's a tick.
It's a tick. So I don't have the tick anymore, or I have the tick under control. I don't know if that qualifies. That's what I thought of from the question.
No, it's a habit for sure. And now you have eyebrows that Omar Adam would be jealous of. So keep on keeping on. But one of the things that you just touched on that I thought was really interesting that I feel like I need to chime in on, you mentioned through entrepreneurship, you're able to learn a lot of these things. And, I have this big fuss with school and education, which if I were to start talking about, I wouldn't shut up for the next 3 hours. So I'll just keep it at that. But essentially, the best education is entrepreneurship for sure. You learn so much trying to run the show and trying to do your own thing.
So you want me to? You're saying should I speak about self-education and the traditional education system?
No, not really. I mean, if you want to, but I'm just saying, what do you think about the idea that, like, we have an education system that tries to teach us, but when realistically we learn more by doing something or actually building, kind of like what that means
Yeah,
in your view?
yeah. I would say schools are designed to create worker bees because you need worker bees for a functioning society.
Hmm.
So for the 1 out of 100, I don't even know what the number would be. I'm just making up a number that have that fire of entrepreneurship. Um, they're not compatible with the worker bee education system.
Hmm.
So, and you have to know who you are. It's like you feel like you're dying when you have a job. Like you're fighting with your bosses. You
I've
can't
been
take
there.
feedback. You
Yep.
can't take the feedback well. Um, then you got to step out of the hamster wheel. Or,
Hmm.
I don't know another analogy to give it. And what I would say about doing things, I didn't even realize. So I've been focused more on development the last few months because I'm finishing my first ground up Airbnb in the Smoky Mountains, the first of God 15 double A frames. Why I'm doing it in the Smokies and why I'm building double A frames, we could talk about another later.
Hmm.
Um, and I was just talking to an ally, a friend of mine that I made, who also had built a ground up, very successful one in the same market. And he was talking to me about a contract that he was looking to write, and he was looking to build a website to do some direct bookings. And I had taken for granted all the technical skills I learned from building Fetchit
Hmm.
when I was giving him advice. I'm like, I was almost getting agitated by the question. I was like, because I'm very sensitive to time
Hmm.
and automation and like if I, I want to get as many things off my plate and get it to a
Becoming
VA.
more efficient.
Yeah, I don't want to. I would like to do. I would like to only make the hard strategic Q and A situations work. I'd rather like everyone else do that, like the dialing, the coding, the building.
Like
I
the
want
technical stuff.
all tactical as much as I can. Now, sometimes you need to do tactical ones before you can. That's a different conversation.
Hmm.
So I quickly explained to him what to do, who to hire on Fiverr, how to quickly use Bard to create your scope of work, or ChatGPT, and how to build the site properly, how to pick the WordPress theme,
Hmm.
how to select who's going to do it, how to manage it on an ongoing basis, how much it's going to cost, a very, how to manage the SEO so the site ranks, how to run some ads on Facebook/Instagram to get people, there. So, I would say you don't learn that in school.
Hmm. For
That's
sure.
taught in 5 minutes. That's probably more relevant than any business class at Ross Business School, and they're
Hmm.
not even talking about it.
It is what it is. What can we do? But hopefully eventually, what they'll do in the schooling system is that they'll implement more classes that are a little more dynamic, because I think the big issue now is that everything is really, really static. So, obviously it's more difficult when you're doing dynamic things, as I'm sure you're aware of, working in entrepreneurship. But I still think that it'd be better to have that kind of education, because then you really teach kids a lot more, for sure. So it'll be interesting to see how the school system evolves in the next few years. But one of the things that you touched upon that I thought was really interesting that I wanted to ask about, you said that school teaches us to be these worker bees, and worker bees are needed to make society function. If everyone tried to be an entrepreneur, if everyone tried to start their own business, do you think society would function?
No, I don't think everyone can be an entrepreneur.
Hmm. Interesting.
Most, I'll just take a to be an entrepreneur.
You have to be crazy.
It requires a lot of elements. So everybody should go and read Think and Grow Rich because it talks about the
It's on the
emotional mental.
bookshelf over there. It's a little far. I can't reach it, but it's on the
Yeah,
bookshelf over there.
very, very, very good. Like step one book for anybody that's thinking about it because it talks about like the emotional elements of the way your brain needs to work
Hmm.
and how to continue and reinforce that. I think first of all, you'll feel it. Number one, you have to have massive desire. You have to have massive ability to look stupid for a really, really long time. And most people cannot handle looking stupid, even to their closest friends, you know? So, and that's years of that.
Hmm.
But I post social, this is a stupid thing. I post social media content. I have like 3,500 followers is not a lot. My friends
Hmm.
think I look ridiculous and I'm willing to look ridiculous for a long time.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's a lot of emotional elements like that, and I think a lot of people play social games to look cool in society, to look to their friends, look good to girls or guys, whatever, and they don't know how to divorce from that. So I think if they don't know, if they can't do any, if they don't have the desire, the toughness, or the willingness to look stupid for a long time, don't. You're just not going to survive when it's hard. It's hard for most of the time. So
Hmm.
you're just you're not going to do it. Don't do
Like,
it.
like most people don't have that tendency, and it's really funny because I was thinking about the same thing. And it's whenever you start something or look at any successful entrepreneur now, they for sure had to have in their mind, before they got wildly successful, if this doesn't work out, I'm gonna look like an idiot, and they have to be okay with that, or at least pretend like they'll be okay with that.
Yeah, I like in my own friends group chat. I have a friend of mine. I love him. Great
Hmm.
kid. He's posting so much news, news, news. Now, if you read Think and Grow Rich, it says like politics. Don't talk too much about politics or gossip. It
Hmm.
says like don't gossip, don't talk about politics as much as you can
Hmm.
because there are people that got rich in bad economies, good economies, shit presidents, good presidents. Like don't now. Obviously, we're Jewish, so we have to be aware of existential threats
Yep.
which there are of a lot of these days to our people. But in general, if you can't impact it because you don't have power, just focus on accumulating power. You
For
know,
sure.
and uh, I'm yeah, that's what I think.
No, I think that's a good thought. It's the simple things that are hard to do, but I think if we can make the hard choices, we can live, much more simple and happier lives. So I'll leave it at that. But to get into what you're mainly up to right now, so you're the founder of Fetchit, and we kind of described a little bit about what it was, what the company does before. But how did you come up with the idea in the first place?
So what happened was, and my grandfather is here and he's listening to us. So I could talk a little bit about it. So when we started selling the company, um, it didn't happen overnight.
Hmm.
It was a
The
slow
process.
process. I was trying to build like what's the next thing going to be. So my grandfather and I decided to partner and create a company where we were going to develop. The story's very intersected, so bear with me.
Hmm.
So where we were going to develop build ground up unique short-term rentals near national parks.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why and, and the reason why national parks is because national parks um, are not under the strict rules that big cities put on short-term rentals. So,
Mm-hmm.
like if you go to LA or New York or Miami, it's very hard to operate an Airbnb. So, we wanted to be in a place that could stand the test of time. And the national parks, not only do they do well in recessions because they're affordable and drivable to most people, um, we wanted to build, and we really wanted to make them unique. So, to make a long story short, finding land that was suitable
Mm-hmm.
to make a profitable, unique short-term rental, and we're building A-frames, which are very unique. We're building a double A-frame, which is very unique. The process of finding land that was buildable was very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you don't know much about real estate development, you can't just, as I thought originally, you can't just buy raw land and just put as many houses as you want on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I thought. If something said 3 acres, I was just like, oh, you can put 45 houses on 3 acres. But that's not how it works. And I didn't know that's not how it works. And I learned through calling a lot of agents, having a lot of seemingly pointless phone calls, and I learned different rules. I learned that in Joshua Tree, you can't build like 30 to 50 feet within a Joshua Tree. I'm not sure if that's the exact, but you can't build if one of those beautiful trees are, you can't, so people are probably selling shit land out there to naive people.
Mm-hmm.
Or, in the Smoky Mountains, you can't buy, it's dangerous to buy a smaller lot, couple acre lot, if it has a creek running in the middle of the property,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a law that you can't build near the creek. So then you're stuck on both sides. Where do you build? I learned that land needs to be flat because excavation costs and clearing trees are the most expensive part of the development a lot of the time,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they run into rock. So I learned all these things manually, and it scared me because I said to myself, I'm in a position where I don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm learning development. I don't give a shit if I end up on the street. I'm going to be successful. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that most people in the same position with a high paying job at a Facebook or a Goldman Sachs, if they feel a little bit of that resistance, they're just not going to do it. And
Yeah.
probably and probably and I thought it would be the same with houses. Like, how do you know, and just how do you know if a house will be profitable as a short-term rental?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how the idea came to be, is I wanted to automate a lot of the elements that I learned manually that I thought were just overly difficult. Now, a lot of beautiful things have happened. Like I actually know a lot about horizontal, not just vertical development, how to get a building permit, how to get a septic permit. And that happened later, and that's disconnected from Fetchit.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say from Fetchit, it was just getting out into the world and diving into attempting development, which now I'm about to wrap up the first one in the next 6 to 8 weeks. I'm very proud of.
Mm-hmm.
But in the process of diving in, just diving into a market and diving into agents, I found inefficiencies,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to solve those inefficiencies. And we did a pretty good job. Did we do an amazing job? Time will tell. But but I'm really proud. And I would say, to your earlier question about
Mm-hmm.
education via action, that was the education via action. So if we were to connect it back to that.
For sure. Well, one, Mazal Tov on the completion of that development. Hopefully, only good things will come from that, and many prosperous years from that. But one of the things that you touched upon that I thought was really interesting in the sense that once you were doing things, and as you mentioned through action, you kind of gained this education, and then you took the things that you learned and like looked to automate them. So you noticed that there was a gap between how long these things take, and then you kind of corrected them. And I think what a lot of people don't realize about entrepreneurship is that when you're doing something and you're actually learning it, you start to think about how you could do it better. And I think, it's one of those things that's easier said than done, but it's just a feeling of actually when you're doing something. It's hard to explain technically. Yep.
I want to add something to the audience because I want to build. If the more I put myself out there, the more I build my personal brand. I want it to be based on reality and real things that happen. I don't want to add any lip gloss. So when we started selling the business, my fiance left my life 2 weeks
Mm-hmm.
after. So when I talk about toughness, I want to just be like really clear, so it's not doesn't sound like a generic YouTube motivational video when you're at the gym.
Hmm.
You have to be willing to everything fall off you. It might not. But are you willing to like continue work? You don't have time to be depressed after that.
Hmm.
When somebody when that happens, you know
Happen
what I mean?
for sure, and it's definitely a mental fortitude, and definitely, no life is simple, but I commend you for being able to kind of focus on the bigger thing that you wanted to focus on, and really getting through that. So, as we say in Hebrew, kol hakavod Yonatan, and awesome that you're able to do that. And for sure, no journey is definitely no journey, and especially entrepreneurial journey is easy. But sometimes you just have to kind of make it through and keep your eyes on the goal. So really impressive that you were able to do that, and something I'm sure a lot of people aspire to. But one of the things that we were talking about, just to touch upon a little bit more, you said that as you were doing that, there was kind of this knowledge gap between, a lot of things that, you thought you could do, and then you're realizing there's a lot of these laws. So, that leads me to the kind of the next thing I wanted to discuss. Why do you think Airbnbs typically make better investments than, a lot of these mid to long term rentals?
The hospitality space, you can build an experience, which means you could build a brand. Brands means you could charge a premium, so you could
Hmm.
charge a lot more than like a multifamily, monthly rental. Especially if somebody's if you theme something out, like if you're going to Orlando and the kids' room looks like Elsa, your wife is probably going to want to pay up
Yep.
because the experience justifies a branded, you know, uh, people save up to go on vacation.
It's like a brand
So
premium, basically.
if you make it a brand, people are already saving up to go on vacation. If you get them to click and book, you can charge a bunch of things. I'm planning to charge close to $1,000 a night, depending on the season.
Hmm.
Um, so, um, it's a. I think it's the most unique asset class, and Airbnb democratized the ability for people like us to get into the space. So hotels, there's all kinds of craziness to. Can you imagine what it takes to build a tower in Miami and make a hotel? It's probably
Crazy.
a 10 thing.
Yep.
You know, that's very difficult. Airbnb, you can get into hospitality with one stay. And so the more unique the experience, the higher you can charge. And I think it's great.
Got it. Okay. So you can really customize Airbnbs as opposed to just making a pretty basic hotel or just a pretty basic apartment building. So,
Yeah.
it definitely sounds like something a lot of people get into for that customization and to be able to, take advantage of those high ticks in demand in certain seasons. So, really great that you're able to do that and provide that service to consumers. But another thing that I thought was really cool, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem like you have a big tech background. And I took a look at the website. The website's beautiful, by the way. We'll be in the description if anybody wants to get into the Airbnb space. But how did you end up building out that online platform?
My core skill is networking.
Hmm.
I know I'm a very good connector of people. That's probably my core skill.
Hmm.
I would say I learned a lot about the tech side as I built it out. So like
Hmm.
it's a Next.js, we're using Next.js. I learned it as I went. Like I learned what an API was for the first time
Hmm.
as I was building it. So um, I used, by the way, one thing that I did to learn as I go, so I didn't get caught off guard with whether it be data scientists or just the full stack developer. I use ChatGPT in a way where I actually use ChatGPT as my teacher. So
Hmm.
I would ask ChatGPT to explain to me things like I was 15 years old.
Hmm.
I do that all the time. I'll go to
Smart.
ChatGPT, I'll say, and I'll do it on development all the time. I'll say, okay, I'll just use development because it's at the top of my mind right now. I'm at the 50% of the dry end, rough end framing. The house is almost up. Can you give me a description of what I need for the HVAC like I am 15 years old? And it does it. It's like
Hmm.
magic.
Well,
And I used
ChatGPT.
that as I was doing the Fetchit thing too. I'd be like, teach me what Next.js is. Like I'm 15. Teach me what an API is. So I'm 15. Teach me who would connect APIs. Teach me what the backend is. Teach that,
All
and
this stuff.
that's how I teach myself. Also, I read a lot.
Hmm.
I read. My grandfather's a huge reader, and so I just grew up seeing readers. So I read every day. So I read
Hmm.
every day. but now we're in the generation of AI. So now I learned how to use AI. And when I combine books with AI, I feel pretty unstoppable.
Got it. Definitely love ChatGPT. So it sounds like you got a degree in computer science from ChatGPT University. So it's cool that you're able to take advantage of that. And I love that you told it to kind of tell you or answer questions as if you were 15 years old. I'll definitely keep that in mind. I think that's a good way to force it to give us simple answers for sure. But another thing that's really interesting about Fetchit is kind of the pricing model that you have. So, if you can, how'd you come up with the pricing model that you use, and why not do something else like charger? I mean, unless I don't know, other pricing models you have or other ways you guys make money, but I'll just leave it at that for now. How did you come up with the pricing for it?
How high do I think they'll go?
Got it.
That's it.
So just to get it straight, right now, do you just charge a monthly premium fee, or do you also take a fee based off of one of your
Just
users?
monthly.
Just
Just monthly.
monthly.
Yeah.
Got it. Did you guys ever think about using a different fee, or?
There's, yeah, I mean, we'd let people sign up yearly too. So it wasn't very scientific. I'm
Mhm.
almost embarrassed to say, but that's just the truth.
As most great things in life, they're kind of mostly in the moment decisions. So great that you're able to kind of come around that. But I think as an independent person and someone that knows next to nothing about real estate development, the model makes sense to me. So if I was ever to get into something like this, I think it's really fair, especially say if someone tries it out and it doesn't work for them, they don't have a ton of downside, as opposed to kind of buying a property and going into all that. So from a third party, unbeknownst schmuck like me, it seems like a good pricing model. But another thing kind of I wanted to get into, and you spoke about on your Instagram too, is that a lot of people said you would fail, which isn't great. Hopefully we pray that everyone supports us in our endeavors, how ridiculous they may seem. But when people told you it wouldn't work out, what was their logic?
Uh, Nobody says it. Nobody hits you in the mouth with that kind of direct comment, but you'll get a lot of passive aggressiveness from people.
Got it. Hmm.
I think that's the more realistic way to put it. And I think I mean, I'll connect it back to what I said before. I think most people are not willing to take shit for years at a time and
Hmm.
look stupid and not succeed. And you know, uh, we celebrate the exits in this business culture, and we don't
Hmm.
celebrate like, look how much shit he took.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of people view want to judge others, and they don't want you to do better than them.
Hmm. Unfortunately.
So when you stand out of the pack, you're triggering their insecurities, and you have to be willing to get side eye and eye rolled and passive aggressive DMs and comments, and um, I
You
don't
know,
think most people are willing to do that. That's what I think.
a thought that I had the other day actually is that the reason a lot of this stuff on content on social media goes viral is you see a video of a nice car, or you see a video of a nice house, or some kid flexing 6 figure, 7 figure, 8 figure brand builder, whatever, all these kind of things. And the reason it goes viral is just the way the algorithm works. People get that dopamine hit, they interact with it somehow. I had thought the other day, what if there was that same reaction, but to like the realistic journey of like, the day to getting lost, or like nobody wants to show up to work that day, or some shit hits the fan. I think society would be in a much better place if like people were just a little more appreciative of that.
I think there should be more of that. It's a little bit of like that Be Real app.
Mhm.
Let's do like Be Real for business podcasting or
Mhm.
short form content. Um, I think it probably has a place in the culture. Maybe you can do
Mhm.
it. Maybe I can do it with you. Um, where talk about like some heavy heavy shit that you overcame. Like I
Yeah.
told the development story. I'm going to tell that story for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
And how I got out of which part two is fun. But
Hmm.
like people like the hero's journey. That's like what Star Wars and the most successful movies are based on, is the hero's
Hmm.
journey, which is an old book. Forget the author's name. That our culture really enjoys that. So if you tell the hard story, it's the core of the hero's journey. So tell some hard stories. I think that's really a great idea, Daniel.
Yep, for sure. Maybe one day, hopefully, maybe there'll be an app around that, or society will be a little more realistic. But definitely some food for thought there. But speaking back to Fetchit, you've had some success and you're continuing to build out the platform. Where do you see the company going in the next 10 years?
I have no idea. um, I have
Wherever
no
that
idea.
takes you.
I have no idea. I hope I don't know how to answer that question. What I would say is I um, hope a lot of people get their dream investment property. That's what I'd say. I can't. I can't see that far ahead. And I hope it's very successful.
Got it.
But I'm not. I don't know how to predict those things, and I'm not into the lip gloss answers.
No worries. I like that answer because it's like, from the perspective of serving others. So I definitely commend you for that. But you also mentioned that, as you went through a lot of these difficult things, how your, faith played a big role. So what role do you think faith has played in kind of your entrepreneurial journey?
So it's a great Think and Grow Rich call out because they
Hmm.
talk a lot about faith. Well, I would say I pray every day. I put on tefillin every day. I put on two pairs of tefillin every day. I grew up with a Chabad background, so
If
if
I
you're
could,
listening,
I could add really quickly. So I also put on tefillin every day, but I don't put on two pairs. That's another level. So I commend you for that, my man.
oh no, I grew up that way. So in the Chabad community,
Hmm.
that's what they do. They put on
Hmm.
two pairs. So it's one Rashi and one Rabbeinu Tam.
Hmm.
So I would say, my family also got a bracha from the Rebbe,
Hmm.
and we take that. My family takes that like to the bank, takes it
Hmm.
very seriously. And so, in the decades of business, something my grandfather talks about a lot is, we have a bracha from the Rebbe, we're okay. So it's sort of like faith-based things um, resonate in the back of your head when
Hmm.
you have a hard day. I do a lot of visualizing too, like actively.
Hmm.
So when I pray, I visualize a lot of things every night before I go to bed. And Think and Grow Rich talks about this
Hmm.
too, which is like your subconscious is powerful. You could argue it's connected to God, it's connected to
Hmm.
your soul, it's the peace of God, right? So um, I do a lot of visualizing. Like I visualize the development being done. I visualize Fetchit. I visualize some of my personal things that I want to accomplish. I visualize them. And does it happen when I set it in my mind? Not always,
Hmm.
but I definitely think it's like I get to train my brain that way by using sort of faith as
The
uh,
trigger or the
the, the
middleman.
the steering wheel.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I definitely agree with you on that point in the sense that I think a lot of the reason that people who are faithful are able to kind of overcome these things is because whenever something happens, obviously it's natural to be disappointed. We're only human, but in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, it was supposed to happen. Now, how do I get around it? So, really great that you're able to use that. But to get into the last few things here really quickly, and I love this question. I think you're going to think it's a really deep one, but I also saw that you had a post talking about how you were faithful and how you think everybody has a purpose. I hope you're ready for this, but do you think we determine our purpose in life?
Oof. Oh my God. I think the last 2 3 years, um, for me, I had the most highs and the most lows so far.
Hmm.
So it gave me a lot of perspective. Uh,
I'll tell you
I
what,
think
we can
I think you have to. I think a lot of luck, what our culture would call it, mazel, maybe
Mazal.
that plays into it. I think
Hmm.
we all have different personalities that um, make us attracted to different things, and opportunities happen if when you go through the years that way. Uh,
It's like you get lucky because you're pursuing your purpose.
I think everybody as a personality is attracted to different independent opportunities. And
Hmm.
I think they have to have the courage to pursue those things based on their personality. Like in the Tanya, which is a Chabad, core Chabad book,
Hmm.
it talks a lot about like, using your life's purpose for good. I used to play basketball growing up with a guy named Tamir Goodman. I don't
Hmm.
know if you know who that is. And you should have him on, by the way.
Got it.
And Tamir is like very into basketball, and he was considered the Jewish Jordan Grabb. He was probably the best Jewish player for a long time growing up.
Mhm.
and he was very into that. Like he used basketball for Judaism. So I think there's definitely in my thinking that everyone has a purpose. I think like I don't I can't I have to be doing this. I can't do anything else. I get
Mhm.
job offers all the time. I
Got it.
can't do it. I cannot do it. I would feel like it would feel like betraying my soul.
Mhm.
That's literally what it would feel like to me. So not everyone has that when it comes to their passion,
Mhm.
probably.
Yep, for sure. I think, high level, we do all have. Personally, I don't think we determine our purpose, but I think it's our choice to find that purpose. So I'll leave that and let people think about that. But on a parting note, Yoni, Fetchit's really awesome, and you've gone through this crazy journey, and I'm sure you're gonna keep on doing your thing. But at the end of it all, what do you want to be remembered for?
Oh man, I don't know, but what I would say to you is something really good today. Maybe something happened today that made me feel really good. I set up two people that I think might like really not hit it off and
It's
get
awesome.
married. And I think I'm very into d- defeating my own like I talk a lot about like I used to pick my eyebrows, now I don't.
Mhm.
I used to. I'm really into like the personal growth of the personality and the soul, like getting sharper and kinder and stronger at the same
Mhm.
time and through life. I really hope that I help a lot of people. I hope I'm much more of a giver. And that's what I'm
Mhm.
trying to do. I want to set people up. I want to help people get a job. I want to accomplish all myself, but um, I want a lot of people to feel like I helped them. You
I
know,
think, I think that's
my grandfather's the same way. So I'm trying to emulate a lot of what he did. He's always giving money to all kinds of people. He spends Sundays just writing checks to people.
it's crazy.
Writing checks. He writes checks every Sunday. He's writing checks.
Mhm.
So what I do is every day when I pray and I'm putting on tefillin at the end of every day, and I give an $8 Venmo to a random rabbi. So I type in rabbi,
Whatever pops up
sends
first.
money, and so
Rabbi
many times
Roulette.
I'm not like, is this a mistake? And I'll write back like, no, I'm helping. I'll just like throw it. I just
I love
so that's my like millennial slash Gen Z like tzedakah
must there.
remix. Yeah,
Yep.
I think I'm just trying to carry on the legacy that my dad and my grandfather let me stand on,
That's
and
beautiful.
just do it in cooler, different ways in my own personality.
Got it. That's a great way and a beautiful answer. And, may we all look to be remembered that way. But Yoni, best of luck with everything and thanks for taking the time. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Yoni Waxman. If you enjoyed the episode, rate the show on Spotify, drop a comment on YouTube, and subscribe.